The history of the areas known as Canton and Brewers Hill is inextricably linked to the history of Baltimore itself. According to the Canton Community Association's website in 2010, Captain John O'Donnell bought 11 acres of Baltimore County land in 1790 and called it Canton. Since then, Canton has been a hub of industry for the greater Baltimore area. Canton's culture and history are vital to understanding the history and culture of Baltimore as a whole. This video will provide a brief overview of the history of Canton and Brewers Hill, revitalization of these neighborhoods, Natty Boh's rise to icon status, the current composition of these neighborhoods, and a look at Canton's future. Canton began as the plantation estate of John O'Donnell and flourished after it became the home base for the Canton Company. During the second half of the 19th century, industry boomed in Canton. The area became the home of many large manufacturing firms such as American Can Company, the Atlanta Can Company, Crown Cork and Seal Company, the Lazaretto Guano Works, and the Ball Chemical Company. These large corporations needed vast amounts of employees to enact their operations, which led to the corporations to provide housing for their employees. The cultural identity and community makeup of Canton and Brewers Hill was emerged through these practices. The Canton Company's hiring practices greatly impacted the population demographics of Canton during the 19th century. The Canton Company actively recruited their employees from across Europe based on their manufacturing skills. Once in America, these immigrants settled into close-knit ethnic neighborhoods, which were located on land that Canton Company maintained the rights to. These neighborhoods were made up of row homes to fit as many workers as possible into one area. In the 1900s, Baltimore was known as a brewing city. The city alone had over 100 breweries in this era. During this time period, Baltimore catered to a very large German population and marketed their products towards that specific demographic. The heart of the breweries fell in one specific area, Brewers Hill, just east of Canton. Dating back to the late 19th century, the Gunther and National breweries were two of the largest breweries in Baltimore. The area they occupied has made it what is called today, Brewers Hill. The Brewers Hill community is located in southeast Baltimore with Fleet Street on the north, Dillon Street on the south, Conkling Street on the west, and Haven Street in the east. The Gunther Brewing Company was started by George Gunther Jr. in 1900. The main structure is a 5-story brick brew house with a 2-story brick ice plant. Unlike National Bohemian, Gunther predicted Prohibition and began to produce near beer in 1919. When Prohibition ended, Gunther returned to brewing and expanded their business with additional brew houses in 1936 and 1950. Gunther was one of the city's greatest breweries. Because the company was linked to German roots and Baltimore had a large German population, Gunther was able to produce 800,000 barrels per year and employ a minimum of 600 people. At the time, National Brewery Company was considered a smaller brewery in Baltimore and was forced to shut down with the onset of Prohibition in 1920. 13 years later, when Prohibition ended, the company was back in business with a new owner and revitalized modern facility. In 1945, the company was producing approximately 230,000 barrels of beer, and around the same time, the National Brewing Company introduced the nation's first six-pack. After several mergers and new ownership, the National Brewing Company was moved from Baltimore. Although the area is no longer producing beer, the culture of Brewers Hill lives through the former brewing companies, in particular, National Bohemian, Natty Boh to locals. This once industrial area became very urban and dilapidated after these businesses and factories began to shut down and workers left the city for the suburbs. But through revitalization projects and gentrification, Canton boundaries have grown to encompass Brewers Hill area as its own. Locals acknowledge the Brewers Hill area as a part of Canton, addressing it specifically by that name. This change has been called the Brewers Hill Project, and according to their website, it is a $120 million multi-stage redevelopment project. The renovations are clearly seen by anyone who has been around the area for the past decade. There are still some blocks that you can drive down with boarded houses or houses under construction, but Brewers Hill is morphing into Canton, and Canton is stepping up its class rank with these renovations. Perhaps the largest renovation to date is that of the Brewers Hill campus area, where they have developed many restaurants surrounding the original renovation of Natty Boh Tower, which is now a business park that also homes apartments and lofts. The tower itself stands where National Bohemian was once brewed. In 2011, Brewers Hill website boasts this welcome change stating, "Brewers Hill represents the latest addition to one of Baltimore's most desirable urban neighborhoods, Canton. Over the past decade, the rebirth of Canton has created a community that is constantly growing and maturing, yet always maintaining the fun and free-spirited personality that accounts for its popularity." Alright, now let's talk some locals and see what they have to say.
2.5 years.
It's a lot different.
Yeah.
Everything's attached. You can hear your neighbors. Everything's in walking distance.
No backyard, no grass, really.
Yeah, no yard work. We don't even leave Canton for the most
No,
part.
we walk. It's nice to walk. And there's no driving involved. It's
It is
either
like-
walking or cabbing.
It's like 50 restaurants all within walking distance.
Yeah. Well, we know that dock workers used to live here, and now it's, well, I mean, now it's more
Yeah, it used to be
like
a
a
dock
lot of young
community.
people have moved into the city. It's a, I mean, like, I definitely see a bunch of, like, older generation that look like they've probably lived here for years, back, like, since maybe they were our age, but I feel like now it's more like a younger
Like
generation.
a upbeat crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, the homes are actually smaller homes for the city, but because they're on the water, they're, you know, they've been fixed up to nice homes. But they're smaller homes because they were dock workers, and dock workers didn't make a whole lot of money. So you had like a family of 8 living in a home the size of this. You know what I mean? This house is 12 feet wide. We both work in the city,
Yeah.
so it's
Like
a couple
10
miles.
minutes.
It's easy.
Pretty easy.
Always
Yeah, we
safe.
both work
Awesome.
not during
Rush hour.
rush hour time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely a bunch of people on our block have babies.
Yeah, somebody just had a baby like 3 houses up.
Yeah.
You know, they have playgrounds for the kids now and like centers for the kids. They have senior centers. It's like living in the suburbs, but you're in the city. I mean, you can go 10 blocks north and it's extremely dangerous,
It's
but
a little scary.
down here it's not bad. And there's definitely like the sense of community. Like during the Ravens games, 10 houses in a row, we all stand outside, bring TVs outside, and watch the football game together, and we all hang out and eat and drink together and stuff. I would say Canton Brewers Hill is
Yeah,
like one and the same.
this thing.
Yeah, some of the features you definitely look for in a Canton house are a parking pad and a rooftop deck. Parking pad because when they designed the neighborhoods, I mean, families didn't even have cars, they had horse and carriage. So the fact that pretty much every house has at least 2 cars makes it difficult for parking. So having a parking pad is really a savior when you coming home during odd hours. And then the rooftop decks because outdoor space is limited and it's nice to have somewhere to go and, you know, be outdoorsy. And
Yeah.
you get cabin fever sometimes if you don't have somewhere to go.
Well, and it's nice living by the water and taking Jackson on nice long hour walks on the water.
And you can see the water from the deck and everything, which is nice.
Alright, it's time to talk about Natty Bo. Let's drink. The Natty Bo icon sits atop this tower, looking over Canton and Brewers Hill. He illuminates at night and winks at locals who enjoy Canton's nightlife. Brewers Hill resident Ryan Goodhughes exclaims that Bo is the king of Canton, and if you are lucky enough, you'll catch him wink once in a while. When walking through Baltimore, you will see numerous locals wearing Bo on their clothes, or some die-hard Baltimorean who wears Bo on their skin. Why is Baltimore really Baltimore? I'm gonna tell ya. Natty Bo has returned to the traditional recipe that made it the beer of choice in Baltimore and across the mid-Atlantic. Likewise, Mr. Bo continues to be a symbol of the community he so proudly represents, and can be seen keeping watch over the city on top of Natty Bo Tower. But he represents far more than a simple mascot. He is also the uncrowned king of Baltimore, and plays a significant role in what makes Baltimore different from any other city in the world. Damn, we're nice. In the past, when the breweries were thriving and Brewers Hill was a very much industrial area, the neighborhoods were full of blue-collar middle-class working families. They were predominantly old German immigrants that ran, operated, and worked in the breweries. Today, the area is over 75% white with an average income of $38,000 and is now considered urban. A very large new project is set to break ground in May of 2013. The area for this project is bounded by Bayless Street, Boston Street, South Haven Street, and Danville Avenue on the southeast side of town, which will further merge the boundaries of Canton and Brewers Hill. The developer is Chesapeake Real Estate Group, who is a Baltimore-based company that has been in business since 2004. They currently have over 3.7 million square feet of industrial, office, and retail development projects, planned or under construction. Just like all the revitalization that has occurred in the Canton area, this project is just another part of the gentrification scheme occurring in the Canton Brewers Hill area today in order to appeal to a higher class of clientele and residents for the area.